We're trying a different angle today simply because the sun is actually out, which, you know, is weird and amazing, and I'm okay with it. But it's directly in my face, and I was like, hey. So anyway, we're on potentially like the last theoretical video on this particular thing. Thank you for your patience waiting for it. I have filmed this video 12 times. I'm really excited about it. So I get caught up in my excitement, and then I use the wrong language, and I'm trying to do a good job. But what this video is what I find most fascinating about protagonists and antagonists and why we've been doing this video. Anyway, so here we go. A protagonist is the vehicle through which we see the story. So we have a set moral context that either the hero completely aligns with, that may or may not reflect real society, and then we have an anti-hero who can agree with and understand and for the most part uphold, you know, the existing moral context of the world, but they're like, I have one that's slightly different, and so I'm just gonna step over here for a second and get what I want, and then I'll come back and it'll be great. So that's anti-heroes and heroes. So a villain, and I'm not saying anything new, a villain is the hero of their own story, which suggests, if we're looking at everything the way that I've been talking about it, they have a moral context that they live with, and they can be like an anti-hero sort of thing, or they can be like a hero for themselves in their stories, in their context. But the thing about a villain is they're going to be diametrically opposed to the protagonist's perspective. Now, again, as an anti-hero slash hero on their side, they could align occasionally with the protagonist, which makes things a little bit more interesting, a little bit more complicated. One of the great examples of this is Catwoman in the Batman comic books. Allergies. So Catwoman is clearly a thief. She's somebody that Batman should and sometimes does take down, but at the same time they work together occasionally, because there are times when they their moral contexts align and they both go, oh no, this is the bigger focus, let's go after that guy. And but since Catwoman, if we were telling her story, she would 100% be an anti-hero. She's gonna like support Batman and be like, yes, this guy needs to go down. Ooh, shiny. I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna grab something. It's fine, don't pay attention. It's all right, we're focusing on the bad guy. And that's how that's gonna work. And so then Batman has a choice of, is he going to slap her wrist? Is he gonna take her in too? Is he just gonna go, oh my God? Is Bruce Wayne gonna suddenly, you know, give a massive donation to the jewelry store? Like, he has some decisions to make, and it's a really fun mashup. But again, that is an example of two opposing moral contexts coming together, and in certain storylines, they're gonna be actually villain and hero. Or anti-hero, whatever. We can get into Batman later. So, why is this fascinating? Because it all depends on the story that the author is writing. It depends on the perspective of the person that we're accessing the story through. Because Batman could just be a really irritating, mildly psychotic, random bully who just shows up and starts like throwing people around when all they're trying to do is make a living. If we're telling it from Catwoman's perspective, if we're telling it from Joker's perspective, I mean, there are some theories out there, which is amazing, that the Joker is actually like a doctor in Arkham Asylum, and Batman is an inmate, and he's just having massive delusions. And it's amazing. I love it. This is why I love stories, because if if you just play around with it, you can create so many amazing spin-offs and ideas. And like, this is what alchemy is. Like, you just get to play with it. It's amazing. It doesn't necessarily change the original story, but it can just bring a whole new perspective and just like, ooh, I want to read that book from that perspective. And I love that. So here we go. Typically, a villain is going to have their moral context that does not align with your hero. So what do? They try to impose typically their moral context on top of the hero's moral context to replace it. What does this sound like? Has anyone ever heard of Maze Runner or Divergent or Throne of Glass or, I don't know, Hunger Games? When you look at your characters through a moral context, you suddenly start looking at all of your stories. You've got genre, you have narrative perspective, you have world building, you have character arc, all of that's involved. And suddenly you just have this story becomes a massive, like, think massive diamond that has so many facets, and you can just turn it and see how it's playing. What are the sparks that are coming off based on the light of the readers? We're gonna run with this full metaphor. It's gonna be great. So if a reader's attention is focused on one facet, what emotions spark, what reactions spark, what thoughts spark, what political movements spark. But if you change it, if you shift it just a little bit and you come at it from a different character's angle, and you've still got the reader's focus, are there different sparks? Are there different colors? Are there different thoughts? Are there different emotions? Is there a different genre happening? This is the beauty and the magic and the absolute addictiveness of stories. And that's why, guys, that's where Maleficent came from. That's where all of the villain's origin stories are coming from nowadays. The spin-offs are coming from. Even all of the reboots, they're coming from this place of, well, what if we like just shifted it a little bit? What if we saw it from her perspective? What if we saw it from this perspective? What if we changed the setting just a little bit? What if we made him older? What if we made him younger? What if we made him Christian Bale? Like, you have so many options with a baseline story if you just tweak it a little bit. And that's why stories are so fascinating, and they're endless, and they will live forever. It's because it creates a way for the human mind to, it's basically like a fidget toy that we can't stop playing with, because we are built for stories. We are built to make connections. We are built to rub up against things and go, ooh, well, what if? And that is what stories do. That is why fan fiction exists. We all just want to go, ooh, what if this? What if that? And it's so exciting, and it's never ending, and it's so vital and so possible. It is so possible. Every story is possible. And what I love about being a writer is I get to just kind of like toss the diamond in the center and go, what are you gonna do with it? Ah! And I'm so excited, because then it becomes a co-creation. And this is one of the things, like, yes, plot holes exist, 100%. I like to think of them as pockets, fanfic pockets, which is great, because then, you know, I'm viewing it from one perspective. I have I've played with it a lot. I've got probably about 200 versions in my head. So it's hard to keep track of them all and then make sure that I've cleaned everything up. I do my best. Editors, everybody helps. We do our best. And you have a different brain than I do. So you're going to notice things differently than I will, which is awesome. And what I'd like to encourage people is not necessarily see it as a plot hole, but see it as a slightly different facet. Like, what's the possibility there? What story fills that space? And that's one of the beautiful things that I love about Harry Potter, is, I mean, our culture has been riffing on this particular world for years. And some of the theories and the ideas and the interpretations and the headcanons and all of that improve it. It improves Harry Potter, which is already stellar, but you suddenly have like, oh, well, let's read it with this theory in mind. And then suddenly it's not a plot hole, it's a, oh, that Dumbledore is alive and he's doing all these things. And theories just make things better. And that's basically just taking the moral context and just spinning it a little bit. That's taking your characters and going, okay, what if they were the hero? What if they were the villain? Like one of my absolute favorite ones that I'd ever heard of. I'm a massive Star Wars nerd. I grew up reading the comics and the books. And so this was with the original trilogy, and then along came the prequels. But there were a ton of comic books, and I'm so sorry, I can't find it. I'm genuinely torn up about this. But there was a series of just like snippets that were basically like fanfic, like snippets of humor in this particular comic book, and I loved it. And the first one that I saw that just changed my mind, so in A New Hope, you have 3PO and 3PO being purchased by Luke and his uncle, and the red android is being purchased instead of R2-D2, which would have been a huge mistake. And in this particular comic, the writer has that droid going, I suddenly have a feeling, and he accesses the Force, and he sees a vision of 3PO and the whole trilogy and Leia and everything like that, and he's like, oh no, if I'm taken instead of this droid, then the Empire will win. And so in a moment of self-sacrifice and prophecy, he self-destructs so that R2 gets taken. And I remember closing this comic book and just going, oh my God. And it completely changed how I watched the movie. And it was supposed to be funny. It was supposed to be just like a what if, kind of a thing. But I love it. I would never have come up with that. But somebody else did. Somebody else watched this show and went, oh, what if? That's the power of story. That's why we can't get enough. That's why we keep creating all of the stories that you can possibly come up with. And see, this is the magic. This is the alchemy of stories. We can't get enough because it's infinitely possible. And what part of this planet can also be infinitely possible? Pretty much nothing. But stories. And the things that we tell ourselves, and the ways that we can possibly look at something. So thank you for sticking with me for so long. In the next video, potentially, I am planning on taking this idea and applying it to one of my favorite trilogies of all time, the Daevabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. It is exquisite. I love it so much. If you haven't read it, go find it because it's brilliant. And like, subscribe. I'll see you later.